The golden sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine slowly opened her eyes. Today was not just any ordinary day. She could feel the weight of importance settling around her like a familiar blanket. The clock on her bedside table showed 6:30 in the morning. William was already awake beside her, his mind clearly running through the day ahead. Catherine stretched gently and looked toward the window where London was beginning to wake up. Somewhere out there, people were already preparing to see them. Families would be packing snacks and choosing their best clothes. Children would be practicing their waves and preparing flowers to give. The thought made her smile softly. She slipped out of bed quietly and walked to her dressing room. The morning routine was always peaceful before the storm of public appearances. Her personal dresser had already laid out 3 different outfit options on the elegant chair. Catherine touched each piece of clothing thoughtfully. The blue dress caught her attention immediately. It was the perfect shade of royal blue, not too bright, but not too dark. The fabric felt smooth under her fingers, and the cut was both elegant and practical. Down the hallway, she could hear the gentle sounds of her children beginning to stir. Prince George was likely already awake, as he always was an early riser. At his age, he was beginning to understand what these special days meant. He would ask questions about why so many people wanted to see them, and what he should say if someone spoke to him. Princess Charlotte was probably still curled up in her bed, her hair spread across the pillow like golden silk. Charlotte had a natural confidence that sometimes surprised even Catherine. The little girl seemed to understand instinctively how to behave in public, yet she never lost her playful spirit. Prince Louis, their youngest, would need the most help getting ready. At his age, sitting still and being quiet for long periods was challenging. But Louis had a charm that made everyone smile. His genuine reactions to new experiences often created the most memorable moments. Catherine walked back to the bedroom where William was now sitting on the edge of the bed, checking his phone for any last-minute updates about their schedule. His dark suit was hanging perfectly pressed on the wardrobe door. The navy color would complement her blue dress beautifully. They had learned over the years that these small details mattered to the photographers and the public. The breakfast room was filled with warm morning light when the family gathered together. The children were dressed in their carefully chosen outfits. George wore a smart shirt and trousers that made him look more grown-up than his years. Charlotte looked lovely in a dress that matched her mother's colors, but was perfectly sized for a little girl. Louis was in his best shirt, though Catherine knew it might not stay perfectly neat for long. They sat around the familiar table where they had shared hundreds of family meals. Today felt different, though. There was an excitement in the air, mixed with the gentle nervousness that came before public appearances. William buttered toast for Louis, while Catherine helped Charlotte with her juice. The conversation was gentle and encouraging. William explained to the children what they would see when they arrived at their destination. He told them about the crowds of people who would be waiting and how important it was to smile and wave. Catherine added details about staying close to their parents and remembering their pleas and thank yous. George asked thoughtful questions about why people wanted to see them. William answered honestly but simply, explaining that their family represented something special to many people. Charlotte listened carefully, her serious expression showing she understood the importance. Louis mostly focused on his breakfast, but Catherine could see he was listening too. She knew that even at his young age, he could sense when something was special and important. The nanny arrived to help with final preparations. Hair was checked and smoothed. Shoes were polished one last time. Catherine looked at her family gathered together and felt a surge of pride and love. They were ready to step into the public eye once again, united and prepared to represent the best of what their roles could be. The black official car stood waiting in the courtyard of Kensington Palace like a sleeping giant. Its polished surface reflected the morning sky and the ancient palace walls. Catherine could see her own reflection in the window as she approached, her blue dress flowing gracefully with each step. The security team had been preparing for this moment since dawn, checking every detail twice. William walked beside her, his hand gently resting on the small of her back. It was a gesture so natural that most people would not notice it, but Catherine felt the comfort and support in that simple touch. Behind them, the children followed in a perfect line, their excitement barely contained beneath their well-practiced royal composure. The car door opened with a soft click, and William stepped inside first. He always entered vehicles first during official journeys, a small detail of protocol that had become second nature. He turned to help Catherine as she gathered her dress carefully and settled into the leather seat. The interior of the car was like a mobile office, with secure communication equipment and bulletproof windows that would protect them during their journey through London. George climbed in next, his eyes wide as he looked around the familiar but always impressive interior. He had made this journey many times before, but today felt different. Today he could sense the extra importance in the air. Charlotte followed her older brother, settling into her seat with the natural grace that seemed to come so easily to her. She smoothed her dress carefully, just as she had watched her mother do countless times. Louis was the last to enter, and his energy was already making the confined space feel more lively. Catherine helped him with his seatbelt while William checked that everyone was secure and comfortable. The driver, a trusted member of their security team, waited patiently for the signal that they were ready to depart. As the car began to move through the palace gates, Catherine looked back at their home one last time. In a few hours, they would return to this same courtyard, but the day would have changed them all in small ways. Every public appearance added to their experience and understanding of their roles. The streets of London unfolded before them like pages in a familiar book. William pointed out landmarks to the children, even though they had seen them many times before. Today the familiar sights seemed more significant. The Tower of London stood proud and ancient as they passed. The Thames sparkled in the morning sunlight like scattered diamonds. Catherine watched the city wake up through the window. Early morning commuters walked quickly along the sidewalks, many of them unaware that the royal family was passing just a few feet away. Some people did recognize the official car and stop to wave. When this happened, Catherine would smile and wave back, even though the tinted windows meant most people could not see her clearly. The children pressed their faces to the windows, watching London pass by. George asked questions about the buildings they saw and the people walking on the streets. William answered each question thoughtfully, using these moments to teach his son about the city and the country they would one day serve. Charlotte sat quietly, but Catherine could see her daughter's mind working. The little girl was observing everything, storing details away in her memory. She had inherited her mother's careful attention to the world around her. Louis bounced slightly in his seat, his excitement growing as they got closer to their destination. Catherine placed a gentle hand on his knee, a silent reminder to stay calm. He looked up at her with bright eyes and gave her his most charming smile. The security team's voices could be heard quietly through the communication system, coordinating their route and confirming that everything was proceeding according to plan. Streets had been checked and cleared. The destination was ready for their arrival. William reached over and took Catherine's hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, a gesture of partnership that had sustained them through years of public service. In that moment, surrounded by their children and moving toward another day of duty, they were simply a family facing the world together. The car slowed down as they approached their destination, and Catherine felt her heart begin to beat a little faster. Through the tinted windows, she could see the first signs of the crowd that had gathered to see them. Colorful flags waved in the gentle breeze like flowers in a meadow. People stood behind the metal barriers, some holding bouquets of fresh flowers, others carrying handmade signs with welcoming messages. George pressed his face closer to the window, his eyes growing wide with amazement. Even though he had seen crowds before, the sight never failed to impress him. There were so many people, and they had all come just to see his family. Some were very old, leaning on walking sticks but still standing proudly. Others were young families with small children sitting on their father's shoulders to get a better view. Charlotte moved to the opposite window, her natural curiosity drawing her to observe everything she could see. She watched as people pointed toward their car, excitement spreading through the crowd like ripples on a pond. A little girl about Charlotte's own age held a small Union Jack flag and waved it enthusiastically when she thought she saw movement behind the dark windows. Louis bounced in his seat with growing excitement. The energy from outside seemed to flow right through the car windows and fill him with anticipation. Catherine gently placed her hand on his arm, helping him channel his enthusiasm while reminding him to stay calm. She knew that in just a few minutes, all of these people would be watching their every move. William leaned forward slightly to get a better view of the crowd. His trained eye quickly assessed the situation, noting the security arrangements and the mood of the gathered people. Everything looked positive and well organized. The police barriers were properly positioned, and the crowd seemed happy and peaceful. These were the conditions that made public appearances successful and enjoyable for everyone. The car moved even slower now, allowing the family to see more details of the scene waiting for them. Catherine spotted elderly veterans wearing their military medals with obvious pride. She saw mothers holding babies who were too young to understand what was happening, but who would one day look back at photographs of this day. There were teenagers with smartphones ready to capture every moment, and grandparents who remembered when William was just a little boy like George. A group of school children stood together in matching uniforms, their teacher clearly having organized this educational trip to see the royal family. They held a large banner with a message of welcome written in bright colored letters. Catherine could see their excited faces and imagined how they must have practiced their waves and prepared questions they hoped to ask. The security team's voice came through the communication system, confirming that everything was ready for their arrival. The crowd control was working perfectly, and the arrival area was clear and safe. Catherine felt the familiar mixture of excitement and responsibility that always came before stepping into the public eye. William reached over and squeezed Catherine's hand gently. It was their signal to each other that they were ready to begin their public duties. She squeezed back, communicating without words that she felt prepared and confident. This small gesture of connection helped center them both before the whirlwind of public attention began. The children seemed to sense that the moment was approaching. George straightened his shoulders and checked that his clothes were still neat. Charlotte smoothed her hair and made sure her small purse was properly positioned. Louis looked to his parents for guidance, his young mind understanding that something important was about to happen. Catherine took a deep breath and looked once more at the sea of faces waiting outside. These were not just strangers, but people who cared about their family and what they represented. Some had traveled long distances to be here. Others had waited for hours in the morning air. All of them deserved the very best that the royal family could offer them. The car came to a gentle stop, and for a moment, everything was perfectly still. Catherine could hear the muffled sounds of the crowd through the thick windows, a low hum of excitement and anticipation that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. William straightened his tie one final time and looked at his family with pride and encouragement. The security officer stepped forward and placed his hand on the door handle. This was the moment they had all been preparing for. Catherine felt her heart beat steadily in her chest, not with nervousness, but with the focused energy that came before important moments. She had learned over the years to transform any anxiety into positive excitement. The door opened, and William stepped out first into the bright London sunshine. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers erupted from hundreds of voices, creating a wall of sound that seemed to lift him up. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every detail of his emergence from the car. He stood tall and confident, his navy suit perfect against the blue sky above. William turned back toward the car with a gentle smile, extending his hand to help Catherine. This moment always felt special to her, stepping from the private world inside the car into the very public world of royal duty. Her blue dress caught the sunlight beautifully as she emerged, the fabric flowing around her like water. The crowd's cheers grew even louder when they saw her, and she felt the warmth of their welcome wash over her. She stood beside William for a moment, and together they created the image that photographers have been waiting for. Two people united in purpose, elegant and approachable at the same time. Catherine's smile was genuine and warm, reaching her eyes in a way that made everyone who saw it feel as though she was greeting them personally. Then came the children, and the crowd's reaction changed to something even more special. George stepped out with careful dignity, his young face serious but kind. He had grown so much in recent months, and today he looked like a boy who was beginning to understand his future role. The crowd loved seeing him, this young prince who would one day be their king. Charlotte followed with natural grace that seemed effortless. Her dress was perfect, her hair shining in the sunlight, and her smile was both shy and confident. She waved to the crowd with a gesture that was both royal and completely childlike. People in the crowd pointed at her and smiled, charmed by her natural appeal. Louis emerged last, and his appearance brought the biggest smiles from the watching crowd. At his age, he was pure energy and joy, and his excitement at seeing so many people was impossible to hide. He looked around with wide eyes, taking in the colors and sounds and movement of the gathered crowd. His genuine amazement at the scene before him created some of the most heartwarming moments. The family stood together for several seconds, allowing the photographers to capture the complete picture. 4 people of different ages and personalities, united by love and duty, presenting themselves to the world with dignity and warmth. The image they created would be seen by millions of people around the world within hours. Catherine placed a gentle hand on Louis's shoulder, helping him stay focused while also showing her maternal instincts. William moved slightly closer to George, providing quiet support while allowing his son to experience this moment of public attention. Charlotte stood confidently between her brothers, her natural poise making her seem older than her years. The crowd continued to cheer and wave, their enthusiasm genuine and infectious. Catherine could see individual faces now, each person with their own story and reason for being there. An elderly woman in the front row dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, clearly moved by seeing the family together. A young father held his daughter up so she could see better, pointing out each member of the royal family. The security team moved efficiently but unobtrusively around them, ensuring their safety while allowing the family to have their moment with the public. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, but it felt natural and spontaneous rather than rehearsed. William gave a small nod to Catherine, their signal that it was time to begin moving toward the crowd for their walkabout. The grand entrance was complete, and now the real work of connecting with the people would begin. Catherine walked toward the crowd with the same natural grace she had shown stepping from the car, but now her focus shifted completely to the people waiting to meet her. She approached a group of young mothers who had brought their children to see the royal family. Without hesitation, she knelt down to be at eye level with a little boy who was hiding shyly behind his mother's legs. The little boy peeked out from his safe spot, and Catherine smiled at him with the same warmth she showed her own children. She asked him his name and what his favorite subject was in school. His mother gently encouraged him to answer, and soon the shy little boy was telling Catherine all about his pet hamster and his favorite football team. The genuine interest Catherine showed in his words made the child beam with happiness. William had moved to a different section of the crowd where a group of military veterans stood proudly wearing their service medals. He shook hands with each man, taking time to ask about their service and thank them for their dedication to the country. One elderly veteran told William about serving in the same regiment that William himself had been part of during his military career. The connection was immediate, and they spoke together like old friends sharing memories. George walked carefully beside his father, watching and learning how to interact with people during these public events. When William introduced him to the veterans, George shook hands politely and asked thoughtful questions that showed he had been listening to the conversations around him. The veterans were charmed by his genuine interest and his respectful manner. Charlotte had discovered a group of school children who were about her own age. They had made cards and drawings to give to the royal family, and Charlotte accepted each one with delight. She looked at every picture carefully, asking questions about the drawings and complimenting the young artists on their work. One little girl had drawn a picture of Charlotte in her princess dress, and Charlotte's genuine happiness at receiving it made everyone nearby smile. A young girl approached Charlotte with a beautiful bouquet of spring flowers. The flowers were clearly picked from a home garden, with daisies and tulips and small roses tied together with a ribbon. Charlotte accepted the bouquet as if it were made of precious jewels, holding it carefully and thanking the girl with such sincerity that the child's face glowed with pride. Louis, despite his young age, was creating his own special moments with the crowd. His natural enthusiasm was infectious, and people found themselves smiling just watching him experience everything with such obvious joy. When an elderly lady waved at him from her wheelchair, Louis walked over to her without any prompting from his parents. He stood beside her chair and chatted about the flowers in her small bouquet, his innocent questions making her laugh with delight. Catherine moved through different groups of people, each interaction genuine and meaningful. She spoke with teenagers about their plans for university, with young parents about the challenges of raising children, and with elderly couples about their long marriages and their memories of previous royal visits. Every conversation felt personal and important, never rushed or artificial. A woman in the crowd had brought her elderly mother, who remembered seeing William's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, many years ago. Catherine listened carefully as the elderly woman shared her memories, asking questions that showed she valued these connections to the past. The woman's eyes filled with happy tears as she realized that Catherine truly cared about her stories. William and Catherine occasionally crossed paths during their walkabout, sharing quick glances that communicated their satisfaction with how the day was progressing. The crowd was responsive and kind, the children were behaving beautifully, and the connections being made felt authentic and meaningful. George had gained confidence as the morning progressed, and now he was asking his own questions and making his own conversations with people in the crowd. Charlotte continued to charm everyone she met with her natural grace and genuine interest in others. Louis remained a source of pure joy, his honest reactions to everything he saw creating moments of laughter and warmth. The security team moved quietly through the area, ensuring everyone's safety while allowing these natural interactions to continue. The balance between protection and accessibility was perfect, letting the royal family connect with people while keeping everyone secure. As they continued their walkabout, Catherine realized that these moments of human connection were what made all the preparation and protocol worthwhile. Each person they met had taken time from their day to come and see them, and each deserved to feel valued and appreciated. The time had come for the formal part of their visit, and the royal family walked together toward the specially prepared platform, where William would deliver his speech. The crowd followed their movement, repositioning themselves to get the best view of the official ceremony. Catherine walked beside William, her presence both supportive and dignified, while the children followed in a perfect line behind their parents. The platform had been decorated with flowers and the colors of the Union Jack, creating a backdrop that was both formal and welcoming. Microphones had been carefully positioned and tested earlier in the morning, ensuring that William's words would reach everyone in the gathered crowd, as well as the media representatives who would share his message with the wider world. William stepped up to the podium with confidence, his tall frame commanding attention from everyone present. He took a moment to look out at the crowd, making eye contact with people in different sections and acknowledging their presence with small nods. Catherine stood to his right, her blue dress creating a beautiful complement to his navy suit, and her calm presence providing silent support. The children took their positions with practiced ease, standing in a neat line that showed their careful training, while still allowing their individual personalities to shine through. George stood the closest to his parents, his serious expression showing that he understood the importance of this moment. Charlotte stood in the middle, her natural poise making her look confident and comfortable despite the formal setting. Louis, being the youngest, required the most attention to help him stand still and quiet during the speech, but his behavior was remarkably good for a child his age. Catherine kept one eye on him while maintaining her focus on William's words, ready to provide gentle guidance if needed. William began his speech by thanking everyone for coming and acknowledging the effort that many people had made to be there that day. His voice carried clearly across the crowd, warm and sincere, making everyone feel as though he was speaking directly to them. He spoke about the importance of community service and the ways that ordinary people make extraordinary differences in their neighborhoods and towns. As William continued speaking, he touched on themes that were clearly important to him and Catherine. He talked about the value of working together to solve problems, the importance of supporting each other during difficult times, and the strength that comes from unity and shared purpose. His words were simple enough for everyone to understand, but meaningful enough to inspire action. Catherine listened to her husband's speech with obvious pride, her subtle nods and smiles showing her agreement with his message and her support for his leadership. When William mentioned the importance of family values and raising children to understand service to others, Catherine's glance toward their own children made his words feel personal and authentic. The crowd listened with respectful attention, many people nodding in agreement with William's points about community responsibility and mutual support. Parents in the audience looked at their own children, perhaps thinking about the lessons they wanted to teach them about helping others and contributing to their communities. When William acknowledged his family during the speech, thanking Catherine for her partnership and mentioning how proud he was of his children's understanding of service, the moment felt both formal and deeply personal. Catherine's smile was genuine and warm, while the children stood a little straighter, clearly understanding that they were being recognized for their own contributions. George listened to his father's words with careful attention, and it was clear that he was learning important lessons about leadership and responsibility. Charlotte maintained her composure beautifully, occasionally smiling at particular points in the speech that seemed to resonate with her. Louis, despite his young age, seemed to understand that this was an important moment, and his good behavior throughout the speech impressed everyone watching. The speech concluded with William's vision for the future, speaking about hope and possibility while acknowledging the challenges that lay ahead. He emphasized that positive change comes from individuals and families working together, and that everyone present had the power to make their communities stronger and more caring. As William stepped back from the podium, the crowd burst into enthusiastic applause that seemed to go on forever. Catherine moved closer to him, and together they acknowledged the crowd's appreciation. The children joined them at the front of the platform, creating a family picture that perfectly captured the balance between formal duty and genuine warmth that defined their approach to royal service. After the formal speech, the family moved into a more relaxed part of their visit, but it was during these quieter moments that some of the most memorable scenes unfolded. Louis, who had been remarkably well-behaved during the ceremony, began to show signs that the long morning was catching up with him. His energy was still high, but his attention was starting to wander, and he began to fidget in the way that all young children do when they have been standing still for too long. Catherine noticed immediately when Louis started to become restless. Without missing a beat in her conversation with a local community leader, she gently moved closer to her youngest son. Her approach was so natural and smooth that most people did not even realize what was happening. She placed a gentle hand on Louis's shoulder and quietly engaged him in a whispered conversation that helped redirect his attention. The way Catherine handled the situation showed her skill as both a mother and a public figure. She never looked flustered or concerned, and she never made Louis feel as though he was misbehaving. Instead, she simply provided the guidance and comfort he needed while maintaining her royal composure and continuing with her official duties. William, who had been speaking with a group of local officials, noticed Catherine's quiet management of the situation and smoothly moved closer to his family. He did not make a big show of it, but his presence created a protective circle around Louis that helped the little boy feel more secure. William's movement was so natural that it looked like part of the planned program, rather than a response to a small family moment. Charlotte, who had been watching her parents and younger brother with the careful attention that came naturally to her, saw that Louis needed extra support. Without any prompting from her parents, she stepped closer to Louis and quietly took his hand. The gesture was so simple and caring that it touched the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. The sight of Charlotte helping her little brother created one of those unscripted moments that people would remember long after the formal speeches were forgotten. It showed the genuine family bond that existed beneath all the royal protocol, and it made the royal family seem more relatable and human to everyone watching. George, following the example set by his parents and sister, also moved closer to Louis. He did not make a big gesture, but his presence added to the family circle that was forming around their youngest member. George's maturity in recognizing that his family needed to work together showed the values that William and Catherine were instilling in their children. The crowd watched these family interactions with obvious affection and approval. People in the audience could see themselves in these moments, remembering times when they had helped their own children navigate challenging situations or when their families had supported each other during difficult moments. Catherine continued to manage the situation with grace and skill, turning what could have been a disruptive moment into an opportunity to show the genuine care and cooperation that defined their family. She engaged Louis in a quiet conversation about the flowers he had seen earlier, helping him focus on something positive and interesting. William joined the conversation, asking Louis about his favorite part of the day so far. Louis brightened immediately at his father's attention and began to describe the lady in the wheelchair who had been so kind to him earlier. His enthusiasm returned as he talked about the people he had met and the things he had seen. The family's handling of this small challenge demonstrated something important about their approach to both parenting and public service. They worked together as a team, supporting each other and prioritizing family needs, while never losing sight of their responsibilities to the people who had come to see them. The security team and event organizers watched approvingly as the family managed the situation smoothly and naturally. These unplanned moments were often the most challenging aspects of public appearances, but the royal family's response showed their experience and their genuine care for each other. As Louis settled down with the help and support of his entire family, the crowd seemed to appreciate what they had witnessed even more than the formal ceremony. These moments of authentic family interaction showed that despite their royal status, William and Catherine were parents first, dealing with the same challenges that all families face while maintaining their dignity and composure. The incident reminded everyone present that behind the titles and the protocol were real people with genuine relationships and caring hearts. It made the royal family more accessible and beloved, showing that their public roles did not diminish their private bonds with each other. As the formal portion of their visit drew to a close, the royal family had additional time for more informal interactions with the crowd. These final conversations often proved to be the most meaningful, as the pressure of the official ceremony had passed and everyone could relax into more natural exchanges. Catherine found herself in conversation with a group of mothers who had brought their children to see the royal family. The mothers were eager to share their experiences of parenting with Catherine, and she listened with genuine interest to their stories and concerns. One young mother spoke about the challenges of balancing work and family life, a topic that Catherine understood deeply from her own experience. Catherine shared some of her own insights about finding time for family while managing public responsibilities, speaking with honesty and warmth that made the conversation feel like a chat between friends rather than a formal royal engagement. William had gravitated toward a group of community leaders and volunteers who were working on local projects to help families and young people. His questions about their work were detailed and informed, showing that he had done his homework about the challenges facing their community. The volunteers were impressed by his understanding of their issues and his genuine interest in finding solutions. One man told William about a youth program that was helping teenagers develop job skills and confidence. William asked thoughtful questions about how the program worked and what support it needed to expand. The conversation lasted much longer than anyone expected, and it was clear that William was already thinking about how his foundation might be able to help with similar projects in other communities. George had grown in confidence throughout the day, and now he was initiating his own conversations with young people in the crowd. A group of teenagers who had been hoping to meet him were delighted when he approached them with questions about their schools and their plans for the future. His genuine interest in their answers and his thoughtful follow-up questions impressed everyone who overheard the conversation. Charlotte continued to charm everyone she met with her natural grace and genuine curiosity about others. She spent time with a group of young girls who had made friendship bracelets to give to her, and she carefully examined each one, asking about the colors and patterns. When the girls asked if she would wear one of the bracelets, Charlotte immediately put it on her wrist and promised to keep it as a special memory of their meeting. Louis, now fully recovered from his earlier restlessness, was creating moments of pure joy wherever he went. His innocent questions and honest reactions to everything he saw continued to bring smiles to people's faces. When an elderly gentleman showed him a photograph of his own grandson, Louis studied the picture carefully and declared that the boy looked very nice, a simple comment that brought tears of happiness to the grandfather's eyes. The photographers and journalists who were covering the event found themselves with far more material than they had expected. The genuine interactions between the royal family and the crowd provided countless moments that captured the best of what royal visits could achieve. Images of Catherine kneeling to speak with children, William listening intently to community concerns, and the children engaging naturally with people their own age would be seen by millions of people around the world. Social media began buzzing immediately with positive comments about the family's authenticity and warmth. People who had been present shared their personal encounters, describing how each member of the royal family had made them feel valued and heard. The hashtags related to their visit began trending as people shared photographs and stories from their experience. The event organizers were thrilled with how smoothly everything had proceeded and how positive the response had been from both the crowd and the media. The royal family's approach to the visit had created exactly the kind of connection between the monarchy and the people that these events were designed to achieve. Local officials who had worked with the royal family throughout the day were impressed by their professionalism and genuine engagement. Several commented that William and Catherine had asked more detailed questions about local issues than many politicians who visited their area, and that their interest seemed authentic rather than merely polite. As the time came to begin wrapping up their visit, the impact of the day was already clear. The royal family had successfully connected with people from all walks of life, showing that the monarchy could be both dignified and accessible, traditional yet modern, formal when necessary, but always human and caring. The time had come for the royal family to conclude their visit, but before returning to their car, they took a few final moments to acknowledge the crowd that had gathered to see them. Standing together at the edge of the departure area, they waved goodbye to the people who remained, creating one last image of unity and gratitude that would stay in everyone's memory. Catherine held the bouquet of flowers that Charlotte had received earlier, the colorful blooms now slightly wilted from the day's activities, but still beautiful and meaningful. She waved with her free hand, her smile genuine and warm, as she looked out at the faces of people who had made their day so special. Her blue dress still looked perfect despite the hours of activity, and her composure remained graceful and natural. William stood beside her, his hand gently resting on George's shoulder in a gesture that spoke of both guidance and pride. His own waves to the crowd were accompanied by nods of acknowledgement to specific people he remembered meeting during their walkabout. His military bearing was still evident, but softened by the warmth of genuine appreciation for the welcome they had received. George waved with growing confidence, his earlier shyness completely replaced by a sense of accomplishment and pride in how the day had gone. He had handled his first major public appearance with remarkable maturity, and his parents' pride in him was obvious to everyone watching. His waves to the crowd showed that he understood the importance of acknowledging the people who had come to see his family. Charlotte continued to radiate the natural charm that had captivated everyone she met throughout the day. Her waves were enthusiastic but controlled, showing the perfect balance between childlike joy and royal protocol that seemed to come so naturally to her. The friendship bracelet on her wrist caught the light as she waved, a visible reminder of the personal connections she had made. Louis waved with both hands, his enthusiasm undiminished by the long day. His genuine excitement at seeing so many people wave back at him brought final smiles to faces throughout the crowd. Even at his young age, his natural warmth and energy had created some of the most memorable moments of the entire visit. The family walked together toward their waiting car, but their pace was unhurried, allowing for final interactions with people along their path. Catherine stopped to thank the event organizers who had worked so hard to make the day successful, while William shook hands with security personnel and local officials who had ensured everything ran smoothly. As they reached their car, the family paused for one final wave to the crowd. The cheers that erupted showed the genuine affection and appreciation that the people felt for what they had experienced together. It had been more than just a royal visit. It had been a genuine connection between the monarchy and the people they served. Inside the car, the atmosphere was one of satisfied accomplishment mixed with the gentle tiredness that comes after a job well done. Catherine settled into her seat with a soft sigh of contentment, while William loosened his tie slightly and smiled at his family. The children chatted excitedly about their favorite moments from the day, their voices overlapping as they shared their experiences. George talked about meeting the teenagers and how impressed he was by their knowledge about current events. Charlotte described the little girls who had given her the friendship bracelet and how carefully they had explained the meaning of each color. Louis bounced slightly in his seat as he recounted his conversation with the elderly gentleman about the photograph of his grandson. Catherine and William listened to their children's stories with obvious pleasure, asking questions that showed they had been paying attention to their individual experiences throughout the day. The car ride home became an opportunity for the family to process what they had experienced together and to celebrate the successful connections they had made with the public. William commented on how well prepared the local organizers had been and how genuinely interested the crowd had seemed in the issues he had discussed in his speech. Catherine talked about the meaningful conversations she had with the mothers and how much she had learned from their perspectives on community challenges. As their car pulled into the courtyard of Kensington Palace, the familiar surroundings welcomed them home after their successful day of public service. The children were already making plans to show their nanny the gifts they had received and to tell her about the people they had met.